Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my unboxing and first look at the Microsoft Surface Book 3. This is the 15-inch model, and the configuration I have here retails for roughly $2,800 US. We've got, of course, the 15-inch PixelSense display, 3:2 aspect ratio, 3240 by 2160. We have Intel's 10th gen Core i7 powering this entire experience, the same chip that I've covered in many Ultrabooks, the 1065 G7, complemented by 32 gigs of RAM. You heard right, a lot of RAM for a Surface Book, and I'll be talking about that later, as well as an NVIDIA GTX 1660 Ti with Max-Q design, 6 gigs of dedicated RAM for that, and of course Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, all that good stuff, full-size SD card slot, no Thunderbolt 3. I'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. And of course, a 0.5 terabyte NVMe drive. Not that much storage for $2,800, but that's the price of admission. A little over 4 pounds. It promises 17 plus hours of battery life. You know, a lot of money for what is uniquely still a product unlike anything else. And that's part of the reason I'm reviewing it for all of you today, or unboxing it, is because you will not find anything else like this on the market. And I've already gone over all of the specifications, so let's just get this thing out of the box. And it is heavy, no question about it. We've got a pull tab right here. Let's see how easy Microsoft made it for unboxing champs like myself. Pretty nice, Microsoft. Not that this is new, though, but you know, the Surface Book, love it or hate it, I do happen to love it. I haven't been able to make it my daily driver for, a variety of reasons. But if this is what you're after, again, and there is nothing else like it, certainly there are more 2-in-1s on the market than I have hair on my head, and I still have my hair, thankfully. There still is nothing where you can take a 13.5-inch or 15-inch laptop and remove the screen, and you now have a full functioning tablet. Build quality is fantastic. Looks like somebody already unwrapped this, because this is supposed to be attached here, I believe. And usually Microsoft lays out port array and things of that nature, but for whatever reason, it was already out of the box. But we know this is brand new. We know no one else has touched this. And look, design hasn't really changed much. This is without question, not a revolutionary, but evolutionary product, but nonetheless, it is a beaut. Now, the keyboard, no numpad, even though this is a 15-inch machine, which is still disappointing, but that's not why you buy this, right? You buy this because, as I stated earlier at the top of the video, there just is nothing else like it on the market. I'm expecting fantastic performance. In terms of ports, let's just run around it real quick. And I didn't talk about webcams, but headphone jack right there. I'll move the box out of the way. Let's get the focus proper, shall we? So headphone jack, we have our Type-C port, full-size SD card slot. Yes, I love this. This is one of the reasons I've always loved the Surface Book. Microsoft doesn't forget that some people still care about that. Volume rocker, I believe that's going to be a power button, but I could be wrong. And then on the other side of the machine, I think I've got everything inverted. USB, yes, I do. I'll correct myself. 2 USB Type-A ports, and then this, I believe, stand corrected, is our full-size SD card slot. This is the charging port, and I should have known that just by the size. That's just not big enough. Anyway, those of you who are running to correct me, it's too late now. I've done it myself. Now, as I mentioned, design has not changed that much, okay? But what has changed, of course, is that now there are so many different configurations of the Surface Book, and that's a sign of true maturation of a product lineup. Does it make it perfect? Absolutely not. It's big, it's heavy, but again, what other machine is going to let you actually take the tablet off? And for those of you wondering why I went with the 15-inch and not the 13-inch version, it's really simple. There is no other machine like this on the market, but then add to the fact that you're going to have a 15-inch tablet, and that to me is the most appealing element. Now, I don't know what the battery life will be like tablet alone. We know combined, Microsoft calls it, 17.5 hours. It's not going to be 17.5 hours. We have a simple button to release this from the machine. You can flip it around, basically accomplishing everything a 2-in-1 can do, but again, having this as a tablet alone. Let me show you what else is in the box, and then I'll give you some more impressions, and we'll see if this thing has juice to power on. Now, because this is the bigger beast, it does have a larger power brick. We're not getting the 65-watt brick that comes with the Surface Book 3 in the 13.5-inch flavor. And by the way, as of today, again, May 22nd, when I checked, all of the 15-inch models are completely sold out. The 13.5-inch not sharing the same success. So that tells me that, like myself, when I was looking at these, the most compelling option for most of you out there who are interested in Surface Books, in spite of their outrageous pricing, are going after the 15-inch. And that's because, well, I'll get to that also a little bit later. I already said it. There's no other 15-inch tablet on Earth. And the fact that this is also a laptop just makes it really unique. So we're not charging with Type-C here. I would imagine this probably can pull a trickle charge with Type-C. I'll test it. It may not. And I say that because we do have a beefier charger than you get with any of the other Surface products out there. And yes, it's still Microsoft's proprietary charging plug, which is still a good thing, by the way. You know, for all the times I say I wish it wasn't there, kind of like on the Surface Pros, because we could just use Type-C. Here, I do like it. I like the fact that it has that magnetic ability to just pop off, so, you know, my dog wouldn't, you know, destroy my laptop by grabbing this and pulling it. At any rate, that is pretty much everything that's in here. Some welcome material, I imagine, which I don't need to look at. None of us really do. That's it. So, back to the machine. So, this thing can game. This thing can run pretty much any piece of software that you could possibly want. However, and yes, it does have a charge. However, the problem, let me get this a little bit wider on camera here so you can see everything. Some things are, move that out of the way so it doesn't interfere too much. However, the issue you're going to have with it, as I try to open this up, I actually can't even get wide enough for the size of this machine, and that's part of it. It is very bulky for what it can't do. So what do I mean by that, as I keep trying to get this all in frame and can't? Well, it's not able, first and foremost, the lack of Thunderbolt 3, I feel like, is an inherent limitation of this, because you've got 32 gigs of RAM, you have a dedicated GPU on board that is solid, but certainly is not, you know, a beast, and the paltry NVMe, the hard drives, I can't even speak to why Microsoft is doing that. It just reminds me of Apple. They don't need to do this to customers. I never said this machine was perfect, and that's one of the gripes I have with it, which I'll obviously spend more time getting into that as I do updates on this in my full review, because that's where I really take issue with what Microsoft does here. In fact, I also think it's disgusting that they don't include a pen. I mean, I don't think that there's a surprise pen in here, and that's because there isn't. And at this price point, they could include the pen. It really would not hurt them. Of course, this is a touchscreen, and the fidelity of the display, again, it's not something I'm expecting to be blown away by.
I'm Cortana.
And that's another issue, as Cortana interrupts me.
A little
So
here, a touch of Wi-Fi there.
that's another thing, is that if you're not going to give us everything, let's not pretend that, you know, the SSD in here is somehow more valuable or a higher performance than what can be found with competing products. Now, again, there is no literal direct competing product because none of them has a detachable display. And, you know, they've improved the hinge design. Everything is soldered, built in. I do not believe that there is any ability to user upgrade anything on this. So if you're thinking, well, I'll get one of the smaller SSDs, don't get ahead of yourself. I don't think you're going to be able to upgrade that. You certainly cannot upgrade the RAM. So you could say, well, I can just pop an SD card in on the left side, of course, not the right. And yeah, you can do that. But as I was saying earlier, it's just embarrassing that a $2,800 machine like this has a 0.5 terabyte. I mean, my HP Spectre X360 13T with the same processor, half the amount of RAM, granted, no GPU, it has a 2 terabyte NVMe drive and still is spec'd under this. It has a 4K OLED. This certainly doesn't have that. And while I know this screen is going to be good, you better believe it is not going to be as good as that OLED. It's just a matter of fact. Now, if you prefer the aspect ratio that this provides, well, you got it. So that is a win for this product. But beyond that, there just isn't that much more to say about it. Wi-Fi 6 I mentioned, Bluetooth I mentioned, build quality is great. I think at a size like this, a numerical pad should be there, but that's not part of the change they've made. I think this could even be larger, the trackpad, but I'm glad they didn't make it any bigger because I don't want something obnoxious like the MacBooks where, it's like the entire bottom half of the deck. I mean, that's ridiculous. It doesn't even serve a purpose. The keyboard I know is going to be fine. Microsoft has a solid reputation when it comes to keyboards. I can already tell you this keyboard reminds me a lot, again, of the Spectre in terms of the chiclet style keys. Very similar travel on them as well. But really, what this all boils down to is that, is it worth it for the cost of entry? And the cost of entry is really steep. I mean, I think the base configuration for the 13.5-inch model is $1,600, and the base configuration for this, here, let me just double check. I don't want to be telling you that a base configuration is one thing and it's not. I don't memorize everything. I memorize the majority of what I cover, but let me just look 1 second so you have correct information. Don't want anything skewed. The base configuration, again, for the 13.5-inch is $1,600. The 15-inch, on the other hand, you're looking at a base configuration of $2,300. And that will just net you the same Core i7, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 256 gig SSD. I mean, that's insane. I mean, when you think about that. So you are paying an incredible premium for the modular tablet screen, no question about it, and the Microsoft name and Microsoft support. And by the way, the Microsoft name and support, those are all great things, but the price of this system is certainly a deterrent, to say the least. So I'm going to put it through its paces. I'm going to get it set up today, start working with it as quickly as I can. The Thunderbolt 3 missing, it's a very big problem in my opinion, because it's a bottleneck for what otherwise is a spectacular piece of hardware, and then all of a sudden something that's pretty much standard on machines that are half the price of this isn't here. Another drawback, which is quite obvious, is how heavy it is. But if I compare it to something like the Lenovo C940 15.5-inch, which I will be doing a direct comparison between this and that, very similar in terms of what they have. But again, you're reminded that Microsoft, in my opinion, I don't want to say cut a corner, but they went with the i7 1065 G7 rather than a more powerful desktop replacement-esque CPU. And I know the excuse for that will likely be, how thin this machine is and that everything is fitting into the tablet, to the actual screen. But at some point, something's got to give. And if they have to make this thicker, I mean, I'm not trying to get Microsoft to make this any larger than it already is, but the fact that you're getting a more powerful processor with the majority of desktop replacement target laptops like this, that is concerning, because this is, again, the most powerful Surface Book ever made, the most dynamic. And if you don't need all of this, you can step down to the 13.5-inch with a Core i5, and 8 gigs of RAM. I don't know why you would do that, but I kind of guess I do, because I already mentioned it. Nothing else on the market is like this. So very excited to share this with all of you. Very excited to get it going. See the magnetic. Everybody always likes to ask, can you open it with one hand? Yes, you can. So those of you one-handers will be happy to know that, but you could already do that with previous models, so no surprise there. But I'm excited to test it out, see what the nearly 4K 3:2 aspect ratio is like. I'm not expecting 100% Adobe RGB support here, because none of the Surface products have that. I would like to see Microsoft bring that back, but I guess based on their own research, that is not that important, which is, again, another mind-boggling thing. Look, I'll address all of these things, like the lack of Thunderbolt 3, like the CPU being what I feel is a little bit underpowered for what it is and for the price and performance that's promised here. I mean, hell, you can get this configured with a Quadro. So again, I've got to scratch my head. The 1065 G7 is a great processor, but it's an Ultrabook chip. And I kind of felt like if there was a generation where they were going to break with the Ultrabook processors, it would probably be this 15-inch model. And that didn't happen. That doesn't still make this an amazing piece of kit, because show me another convertible that has a 15-inch tablet that breaks away and has as much horsepower as this. And guess what? You're not going to find one at all. And that's what makes it unique. And please, the people who like to compare this to the MacBook, don't make me throw up. The MacBook wishes that it could be this sexy. And by sexy, I mean this dynamic in terms of having a screen that removes. I mean, come on. That is not an Apple to Apple comparison in any way, shape, or form. And I'll get to that in my update too, because I hate it when people are like, oh, it compares to the MacBook. No, it doesn't. The MacBook compares to crappier machines, in my opinion, because it doesn't do what this does. Nothing does. And this really needs to be compared to, again, convertibles, if anything, because it can change position. The MacBook can't do that. Nothing Apple can or makes can do that. So I hate that comparison. And to all the reviewers out there that have been knocking this because it is just another spec update, I got to say, I'm worried that they could end up discontinuing a machine like this. So I'm glad to see Microsoft continuing to make it and continuing to simply give us a hardware update. I would love to see a redesign, but you know, you can't have everything. Even at, I think the top model specs out at $3,800. Wow. Get a desktop. Anyway, any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please stay safe. Later.